Backrooms is one of those movies that's both mentally stimulating and physically unsettling, making my skin crawl anytime I even think or talk about this movie. If you haven't seen the Backrooms movie, or if you plan on watching it soon, go ahead and skedoodle because there's going to be some spoilers and I want to talk about them. Everything about this movie was extremely unsettling, but something about it being placed back in the 90s made it even more terrifying. The first person found footage point of view gave me this deep internal feeling that I needed to get the fuck out of there, and I wasn't even in the backrooms. However, the third person perspectives that we got with the characters gave me this extremely claustrophobic feeling and this level of frustration anytime any of the characters would just go wandering willy-nilly into the backrooms without having any kind of way to retrace their steps. Liminal space horror is easily becoming one of my favorite subgenres of horror, and Backrooms is easily holding the top spot in that subgenre. If we do ever end up getting a sequel about the Backrooms, I really hope it's from one of two different perspectives. Either we get to see more about Phil and him going in, maybe he gets hurt while mapping out a new area and gets chased down by a new entity. But I think a more interesting kind of concept would be to have someone going into the Backrooms for their first day on the job, but their partner just so happens to be a serial killer in disguise. In the past, whenever the scientist partner would go missing, they would just blame it on the entities or the fact that they would get lost in the Backrooms, leaving a pretty good lie for someone to get away with murder in there. And then the scientist has to go in for the first time, and then suddenly he's being chased by his partner who's a slasher, and then is also trying to maneuver the Backrooms and avoid any entities that might also be down there as well. I don't know, that one seems like it would have a lot of different stuff going on, but it could still be a fun one. Either way, there's a lot to explore with how the Backrooms ended. What exactly is the Backrooms? There's two different answers depending on who you ask. If you ask the Async Corporation, they'll tell you it's the greatest thing to ever exist within their lifetimes. And they never really tell us anything more than that. The internet does say that they're trying to exploit it for real estate value, but I'm not a Backrooms expert, so I'm not gonna dive into that. But if you were to ask someone who got lost in the Backrooms what the Backrooms are, someone like Clark per se, they'll tell you that the things that exist within the Backrooms, the rooms, the hallways, the entities, the objects, they all exist in the real world. But when the Backrooms tries to create them, the harder it tries to remember them, the less of it that it does. Which is why some of the furniture's stuck together or the stop sign is actually backwards. When Clark has Mary tied up at the dinner table in the Backrooms, he ends up telling her that somewhere out in the world there is a man in a blue striped shirt and there is a man in a wheelchair with a lamp next to him. However, the way that the Backrooms remembered them was distorted and wrong. Now, if you notice, we don't hear anything about the red-haired woman, and I think that's because that red-haired woman is a distorted memory of Clark's wife, which is why he kind of treats the red-haired woman like he does and talks about her the way that he does. While Clark may be onto something with the Backrooms just being an amalgamation of a whole bunch of different distorted memories, I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. The Backrooms is a compression of places that hold really heavy memories or traumas. I mean, think about it. We see Clark's store, which essentially represents everything he gave up for his wife and is also the cause for a lot of his misfortunes. We see Mary's childhood home, where she was trapped inside by her mom who was afraid to even go outdoors and had that level of emotional trauma within her childhood home. We also see Kat and Bobby's apartment, which while we don't know much about what may have happened there, I do feel like because of their traumatic events that Kat and Bobby had in the Backrooms was able to pull their apartment complex in and be able to hold that memory within it. But that's just food for thought. Did the ending to Backrooms leave you scratching your head, asking yourself what the heck just happened? Well, fret not, my friend, because I can help you out there. To understand the ending, you first have to understand Mary. Throughout the movie, we constantly see flashbacks of Mary in her childhood. But before we even really get into the movie, we see Mary seeing a house being demolished, learning that that house was her childhood home. And while the memory we see in the beginning seems sweet and pleasant, and that's when her and her mom were putting their handprints into the cement. But that's the only pleasant memory we really get to see from Mary's childhood. Because at some point after them putting their hands into the cement, her mom slowly ended up descending into a mental unwellness, not letting Mary go outside or even open a window for fear that something or someone would get into their home. And eventually her mom, against her will, is institutionalized. After that, Mary was free to go outside, to grow up, and be as normal as she possibly could. And then she took on Clark as a client. Once Clark goes missing, she goes to try to find him. And then she stumbles into the back room and she gets involuntarily, against her will, trapped in the back rooms. And then after she wanders in a ways, she ends up stumbling upon Clark, who then takes her prisoner against her will and holds her hostage. After a real scary situation with Clark, she's able to kind of talk him off of the ledge, and he ends up untying her, letting her free. Right before the scary Captain Clark comes in, takes a bite out of Clark and throws him around. While she's trying to run away from Captain Clark, she's intercepted by the async researchers, to which then she's taken to another room where the scientist Phil comes in to kind of talk to her about what she saw and what the Backrooms is. And then she asks, what happens now? And Phil tells her that it's not his choice to make. And it dawns on her that she is stuck there, just like when she was a child, just like her mom, and just like when Clark took her hostage. She is being kept against her will, and it finally just kind of dawns on her that that is her fate. But then to take it a step further, as we descend down into the backrooms again, we actually see that the backrooms has kept a compressed, distorted memory of Mary within its hallways, trapping her there in the backrooms forever as well. Clark from the Backrooms is one of those main characters that really stresses me the fuck out in all the best ways possible. Not only does this man walk into an eerie, suffocating extension of his store that he never knew existed there, but then he is chased out of that said extension of his store by some unknown entity, barely finding his exit in time. He is so freaking lucky he didn't get got. He was that close. And as if going into the Backrooms once wasn't enough, he keeps going in. He starts mapping out chunks, and then he tells Mary that sometimes he feels like he's gonna get lost in there. And he also knows that there's something else in there because he'll put stuff down and the next time he goes in, it's been moved. But yet he keeps going in. And then when he tries to tell Mary, she very understandably doesn't believe him. So he decides that he's gonna go in and try to get proof. And instead of just asking Bobby and Kat if he could borrow their camera for something, he instead shows up at their door, violating several different boundaries, and asks them if they'll come help him if he pays them. Mind you, this is Kat's day off. And then he sends Bobby down, and then it's just a nightmare after that. And the second that Clark and Kat also fell down that sloped hole, and Clark got lost in the tiled hallways, oh, I knew it was game over for them. I knew Clark was cooked. No one really had a good ending within the Backrooms, but no one had it quite as bad as Bobby and Kat. I hate nothing more in a horror movie when innocent, cool people get dragged into life-ending shenanigans that they had no part in dealing with. Bobby and Kat were just trying to enjoy their day off when Kat's boss comes banging on their door asking them for a favor. And then when Bobby and Kat actually see Clark walk through the wall, Bobby's all for it, and he refuses to listen to Kat, who's very wisely saying they shouldn't go in there. And I swear if Bobby would have just listened, they probably would still be alive. Probably. Maybe. Both Bobby and Kat, though, could really do with some stiffening of their backbones and maybe laying down some thicker boundaries. They should have absolutely refused any kind of precarious situations that Clark was trying to put them in. like trying to send Bobby down that sloped hole, I would have been throwing hands or tying the rope on Clark to send him down. Because unless Clark had some good and valid reason of absolutely needing to record that specific hallway, besides trying to film and map it out, then he can go f off. I really wish we could have seen where Kat went and where she ended up, as well as everything that happened after the camera got cut. But what a terrible way to spend your day off. Your last day off too. This movie is going to be living rent-free in my brain for a really long time, and I'm totally fine with it. Just means I'll be rewatching it before too long. Would you explore the back rooms? And if you would you at least prepare first, or would you just go in all willy-nilly unprepared? Go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments below and let me know. If you like movies and you like to see theory videos, reviews, and character breakdowns, then don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to get more videos just like this one.